That is for sure. Hey, and I got out there. Did you guys see that little message? It popped up. We're now live on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
Looks like Megan's getting it done there. All right, Megan, are we good to get started? Should we go ahead and call the meeting to order?
I'm just getting the eScribe video stream and recording set up.
Okay.
We are good to go.
All righty. All right. Call to order the Missoula Energy and Climate Team regular meeting for today, Thursday, December 10th, 2020. As a Zoom virtual meeting. It is being recorded on the Missoula YouTube channel for anyone to watch now or later. You can always find that link going to the Missoula eScribe system and searching for the Climate and Energy Team meeting for today. And that's also a great place to find the minutes as well. So roll call. Megan, you want me to do that or you want to do that?
I can do it.
Sure.
Chris Rowe,
Here.
Jeremy,
He's muted.
Sorry about that. I was talking as if I wasn't muted. Yes, I am here.
thanks. Michael,
Here.
Brian, Scott,
Here.
Josh,
Here.
Amber, Chase.
I am here.
Great, thank you very much.
And Brian, we didn't hear a yay, you're here from you.
Yeah, I was just tuning in. Having some technical difficulties. I'm here.
All right, thanks. All right, next up is the, just a little background. Amber is at a health committee meetings, which is obviously taking a lot of her time these days, but she'll try to come in later on, and we'll look forward to hopefully hearing from her. Next up is the approval of the previous meetings minutes. Man, Megan, you are like the meeting minute master writer here.
Oh, thank you.
This is quite something. It took a while to get through this. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah.
My OCD show.
Yeah, it's a good OCD show. So anyways, for anybody, hopefully you linked into it and are looking at it. I unfortunately printed it out because I only have one computer screen here, so I can't do two things at once like that. So anyways, any comments on the minutes besides mine?
Move to approve.
Second.
I second the motion.
Yeah, I don't know if we needed a second, but
Yeah.
move to approve and second, and all those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Good.
All right, sounds unanimous. Minutes have approved. Announcements. So the upcoming meetings. So hopefully everyone got that link that Megan sent out and was able to connect. It was interesting. I connected to one from a couple meetings ago, and it put me in the meeting, but it didn't bring me into the meeting. It was on kind of like on the side. I couldn't talk. I couldn't turn on my camera. So if there's a question about the link, let me know and we'll make sure we get you the correct one. But Megan is sending out a reminder now, an hour before the meeting, which is fantastic. When I should say announcements, this should also probably change this to say comments as well. If there's general things that have shown up in your mailbox or, you know, in your day-to-day activities you want to share, this is probably a good time to do it. Nothing that's actionable or anything, obviously, but just some thoughts that people might have. One of the things that I've got on mine is yesterday, out in front of my house, the Missoula Water was putting in a new smart meter. And eventually they're going to put in these new smart water meters across the entire city. Right now they're doing kind of subsets. And these smart meters are have a radio transmitter capability, and they transmit to a tower, and that tower transmits to the Missoula Water main SCADA center. And so they can manage their water supplies better, have water when it's ready and not have too much, not waste water, because wasting water is the same as wasting electricity, which is the same as, putting more carbon in the atmosphere. So one of the things that'll go along with this is there's going to be smart meter apps that you can have on your phone, your computer, and show you literally minute by minute water usage, which again is intended to lead toward better water conservation and hopefully reduction in greenhouse gases. So I'm going to get some more information about that. We'll put it on a future agenda, but it is kind of cool that they funded that, and they're slowly rolling it out. But the whole city will eventually have these smart water meters. Anybody else get theirs yet? I seem to be starting now like at our corner of town, and so I think until they get clear up at the other end up in the Rattlesnake, it might be 2 or 3 years for them to do it, because they're just sort of doing it on the side, doing it themselves. And
Chris, have you seen if there's a plan for implementation, like a schedule?
no, just, I was just talking to the guy, very chatty fellow there with Missoula Water. And so he was telling me stuff, but I have not had a chance to look it up online and see what all the details are. But if I find some, I'll pass them along. I'll pass along a link to see, because they must have something there and the Missoula Water webpage about this.
Right. All right.
Anybody else have any comments? Anything else going on? All righty. Moving on to public comments on items not listed on the agenda. So this is one place of two where the public can comment to us directly, communicate with us directly via the either the webcast or the phone number. The phone number is 1-235-215-8782. And when you get there, you would put in the meeting ID 960-049-3694. And it'd take a minute or so. So we're going to wait in case anybody wants to connect. You can also view this live by going to www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts. Imagine everybody's watching the health committee meeting. It's get pretty focused these days on the health stuff, which is good. Okay, here no public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I'm going to ask for a small change on this agenda. Item C, which is discussion of parameters for the bills the team will focus on for the upcoming legislative session. I'd like to move that from C to A, because Michael needs to do health department stuff starting at 1. So hopefully this won't take too long. Michael, do you want to introduce what you're thinking, and then we can elicit some response from the team?
Sure, that's great. Thanks, Chris. So Jeremy was kind enough to volunteer to help me out with this year. 2 years ago, when I was cruising the bills on the legislative session, there's a lot of material to mine through. And I'm not really sure exactly what type of parameters our team would best like us to focus that search on. I think last session I looked through some 3,568 bills or something like that, and so it's a tall effort, and having some sideboards on that would be really helpful. If we're going as deep as looking at forestry bills, or if we're just single focused on big carbon footprint items, or exactly how the board would like us to handle that, that would be great.
Yeah, so we'll start the discussion here, but we'll try to get these written down and circulate a list. If you think about something a little later, or you see a bill that came up, we can add to the list. So we'll try to get something going that way. My first thoughts are there's a lot going on. There was just an article today about a lawsuit against the PSC. This isn't legislative, but it gets to a point where PSC was sued because they didn't provide favorable terms to a wind power company that wanted to do a joint wind battery process. And so I guess my point is there's a lot of big scale renewables out there, PSC stuff, things that affect Northwestern Energy that we can comment on, but I think we should focus on things where the city is going to be directly impacted, or the city can do things as a result of this legislation that will help reduce carbon. So I'm always thinking, when I think about our team, I'm always thinking, reducing carbon emissions. If the bill has to deal with that, that would be my focus. And so not to get too far afield. Now, that said, I would like to hear from Amber and other folks on the Conservation and Parks Committee to see how broadly they wish us to address energy issues for them. And so we should also reach out to Amber and her team as well, I think. So any other comments, please jump on in.
Michael, I had a question for you about 2 years ago. Is there, so the individual that the city of Missoula hires to advocate on our behalf at the state legislature, are there parameters that they set up for what are kind of sideboards, as you described earlier, of what that individual advocates for the city of Missoula's kind of thoughts on? I guess I'm just wondering if there are parameters set up for that individual as well.
There are, and I'm sure there are people with the city that can speak more intelligently about this than I can, but there are sideboards, but those sideboards are far larger than anything that we would deal with on energy and climate team, because they're dealing with the whole host of issues that might affect Missoula, from financing and transportation and
Sure.
all down the line.
Yeah. Okay. I will say it does feel a bit overwhelming, when you think of 3,500 different bills and how do we filter that down? Yeah, part of me wants to go back and look at some of the bills from 2 years ago and see, if we should use that as a guide. I guess I wonder, Michael, also as far as your thoughts on bills that are presented simply so that they are presented without a true expectation as far as whether or not they would get anywhere. But I would imagine that's hard to know at the outset as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what I was alluding to in our email from earlier, that, we'll set a time for the two of us to really dive into this deep, but I will also send you along all the email threads from 2 years ago, and you can see the breakdowns that I did with all the different bills. But
Right.
You're right, it gets really tricky because there are bills, thrown out there just to throw out there and see if something sticks. But then there are some that have real legislative intent. And then there are still others who are deceptively named. So you don't even realize by just going through the list of bills and reading it, that bill would have anything to do with energy and climate until you opened it up and found out, that the bill to save America was, something about energy and climate.
Right. Michael, do you find that the information that you filter through, does that get shared with individuals outside of this group? I'm just wondering if it makes sense to utilize the time and energy that we're putting into it to share that information, more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Formally, it gets shared or last time it got shared with, and I'm sure with this time too, got shared with the Parks and Conservation, the committee that we report to. And then as Brian has so appropriately pointed out in the past, teaming with MREA, who do this same kind of work, is a great idea. And then also, I worked with several other related groups, related in the sense that they have legislative stakes in the game, not necessarily anything to do with energy and climate, but that professional groups can help support each other by lending support to in other individuals' projects. So I worked with the Missoula or the Montana Environmental Health Association and several other groups that we would kind of cross-pollinate with each other.
Good to know. Thank you.
And just a few thoughts on the legislative session and the question about knowing which bills you need to pay attention to. I think one new factor this year is there might be bills that have been introduced for the past 16 years that were just introduced for ceremonial purposes, but they might actually have some real traction now that another party's taken over the executive branch of the government. So you might see things that have been there a lot in recent years that are actually have some traction this year.
Very excellent point, Josh. Thanks.
Another way to filter it down, because I imagine at some point, whether it's through Parks and Conservation or delivering this to the city council and them forwarding it to their people there that are going to facilitate the city stuff, we'll want to give them something that's useful, workable, and not ask them to overcommit their lobbyist. So that's, again, I come back to we've talked, there's a lot of stuff and you don't always know what's going to make it and what doesn't, but we do want to get it to a point where we can actually make some either comments to the city council, or actually get the lobbyist to respond, or get the city to respond in some meaningful way.
Yeah, excellent, Chris. And I did leave one group out from before that's very important. Amy Sillenberg, Climate Smart, talked with them too 2 years ago. But to Chris's point, even more, a lot of these bills, even though they might be just placeholder bills, once they get introduced, they can move really quick. It just depends on what committee they happen to be in. So sometimes they can get tabled early on, but other times they can be shepherded through pretty fast. So it's always good to know what's out there, regardless of whether we think it might make it somewhere. It's just always good to have things on the radar that are important to us.
Michael, what tool do you use? Is you just go into the state legislative website, and obviously they must have a database of everything that's been submitted to date, and just sort of, is there a filter mechanism, or how do you actually take everything that's out there and start narrowing it down?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is just going to the state website where there's a list of bills that have been submitted and are in the queue, and then just going through the list one by one and finding out what they are. And then the really important part is diving into the bill and reading the language of it carefully, but then also looking at the fiscal impact, because there's a fiscal impact that's given about it, and that a lot of times can tell you a lot about the bill just from inside of that fiscal impact summary.
Yeah, and hopefully some of these partner organizations will be doing the same, and we'll have some priorities. It could also be, Montana Renewable Energy Association or other organizations like that may also be, some of these statewide groups are creating their list already as well, and maybe we can find those on their websites or whatnot.
Exactly.
All right. So I'll start a document, but please, when you come up with ideas, either specific bills or or how you want to refine this down, please send those along to everybody, and I'll put them in a document, and maybe Michael or Jeremy will, and we'll start keeping track. So keep the thoughts going on how to move forward with this in a way that's not going to overwhelm Jeremy and Michael, and because we appreciate their efforts, but this could be a really big lift, obviously.
So I had a couple questions. We've done this for a number of years, and each time we do it, I question deeper the relevance of us doing it. I think it's good to know from our own for our own edification of the committee. But as Michael pointed out, sometimes these things move very fast, and you have to be on top of them minute by minute, hour by hour. And I think maybe Chase can chime in. At one point, I didn't think we were providing timely information, and the lobbyist, while they're appreciative of our efforts, I don't think it really mattered much, to tell you the truth. And I think some of the professional organizations that do this all the time, like MEIC, League of Conservation Voters, they're really on top of these type of things, and they push pretty hard on them. I don't know. And Michael, did you say you go through each of those bills one by one? Because when I did it, you could filter by energy bills or conservation bills. You could put up some sort or some filters that would just pull in. In fact, you could get emailed when a bill is coming up through that legislative service.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. And maybe somebody has a better way to handle that than I did. But whenever I tried that, it really wouldn't pull all the things that seem to have those sorts of energy and climate impacts. It was more the purview of the person who set up the sorting software, depending on where those bills ended up. And I wasn't confident in the results I was getting in that, but doesn't mean that things have been improved since last time, or I just was not very good at manipulating the sort.
Again, it seems like it's a lot of effort on behalf of you and Jeremy and the team, I guess, to try to manage this flow of information. And while it's interesting, I deeply question the relevance or the worth to the city on us doing that. Chase, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't think I have an opinion on the relevance. I like everyone has said, appreciate the work to study these bills and provide comment when you can. The structure of the team and the timing of it has made it difficult in the past. And so perhaps it's worth a conversation with Amber ahead of the session. So now it's good you're having this conversation now to see if there is a more efficient way for comments to flow from the team on bills. From the city staff perspective, or the side of the legislative session, just to give you a sense of what goes on, Jessica Miller in the mayor's office is the legislative point person, and the city has a lobbyist. His name is John McDonald, and there is sort of an executive team at the top of all of that. And I know it consists of the mayor and Dale Bickle, the CAO, at least, probably others. But Jessica manages a bill tracking software on the city side, and then they appoint staff with certain expertise and lenses to follow bills and then funnel them into this overall bill tracking software. And then city staff has the opportunity to provide comments on bills that pertain to their work with the lens of how it affects the city, whether it's a barrier or something that can give us the ability to do something. And then the executive team decides with the lobbyist from a strategic point of view, whether to, and again, who knows what it'll be this year, but whether to show up and testify in person, or whether that lobbyist, just does their thing with groups and legislators otherwise to try and get an intended result. Strategically, sometimes it's good for us to show up. Strategically, sometimes it's good for Missoula to sit out, frankly, just because of our status as a little bit of an outlier in the rest of the state. And certainly this year is going to be a different legislative session because of the election and those results. So that's probably a little more than you bargained for, but I certainly am willing to let you know what I'm tracking on that side. And I don't know if I have the ability to take comments from this team and submit them through that kind of internal city staff software bill tracking program, but we would have that conversation with Amber if that's something the team is interested in to make the timing work better.
Chase, can you repeat Jessica's name and what she does?
Jessica Miller,
Okay.
it's her name. She's in the mayor's office. I don't know her official title. Maybe I can Google it, but when the session comes around for 90 days every 2 years, one thing that she is the point person of is all things legislature for those.
Okay.
90 days.
Yeah. The other thing that comes up in my brain, just as we were talking about this, is, are there efforts that are being done that are duplicative? So if we look at the League of Conservation Voters, and we look at MEIC, and we look at MREA, and a variety of other organizations, does it make sense for one group, whether that's us or a different group, to be kind of the point person and then share out that information rather than all kind of doing the same work and then sharing out the same information?
Well, so I don't know if you were asking me specifically, but I will provide comment on that. Keep in mind those groups are advocacy groups and they're nonprofit groups. If our comments are flowing from the city, then that's from a little bit different place,
Right.
perspective, and could carry a little bit different weight. So I guess it depends on how this team considers their comments. I guess what place they're coming from. And I
Right.
respect they're from the city, and so that local government voice is a different voice than these nonprofit advocacy groups.
Right.
Having said that, I get a ton of information from all of those groups, and they do a great job during the session of providing like hot lists and synopsis of these really complex and bills riddled with legalese. And so, I often love to survey the content that's put out by these groups during the session. It helps me stay up on it and understand, again, some of these really complex bills at times. I
Right.
it's helpful. I don't know if that was specific to me, but I did jump.
Yeah. Chase, it wasn't specific to you, but I think you bring up a good point. Separating the comment on the bills from the filtering, I think is the other point that's relevant. Is there one way to filter that can be done efficiently so that Michael's work and my work is not too much? And
And along those lines, Jeremy, maybe, if I know it's through the administrative arm, not through the legislative arm, but maybe Jessica Miller can share what she's doing with us, maybe through Amber. We would obviously go through Amber to make any such request back to the city, but that way, the projects that become priority for the city can also become priority for us, and we can support those efforts through our voice or through helping to inform the city council and Parks and Conservation, or through submitting letters to the state legislature directly. Any of those things are possible, but I do like the idea cutting through and trying to focus on those things that the city has decided are important to them through the mayor's office, and then subsequently through the administration, and also I'm sure that flows back to the council as well. But let's make a point of chatting with Amber about seeing if we can loop Jessica in, and also maybe have a moment with our John McDonald as well, or see what maybe if the mayor is sort of the lead on this, how he sees this moving forward as well, again through Amber. So maybe we'll leave it at that. It seems like that's a possible way forward, and we'll keep Michael from having to spend his nights reading legislation.
Helps me get to bed.
We have to move on, gang. Any further ideas, please send them out to everybody, and we'll keep this moving. And Brian, your point is well taken, that we do need to, if we're going to do this, we need to be efficient and useful. And so that's really got to be our focus, in as much as we can. All right. So next up is our update from Chase, and everybody knows Chase Jones, the energy program coordinator for the city of Missoula. It's been a little while. We kind of got a little bit squirrely with our meeting times and missed a couple of months. And so it's all understand that happened, but it seems like we're on pretty good track now. And Chase has also got a number of things that are coming up that that he's going to move through to the city council, and will end up coming through our team in that process. So we look forward to working with Chase on those things. And he's also going to introduce a new staff member. So we do have a little agenda here, but if we add additional things, that's okay too. So I'm going to hand it over to Chase to give us an update on what's going on within the energy program at the city.
Sure. Thanks, Chris, and great to see everyone. It has been a while. Love all the new hairstyles, whether it be longer or shorter. And glad that you've recovered, Josh. That sounds scary. And Chris, you better not bring that back from Vegas.
No.
I know you have no intention of doing that.
Oh,
but,
man.
It is good to give you guys an update. Chris and I talked last week about how we might deliver this, and what we decided was kind of a couple little lightning round agenda items. And so I'm going to keep it pretty high level and as succinct, at least as I can be, which isn't always my strong point, but I'm going to try that. And then just answer any questions or dive deeper if you want. So I did want to start with a pretty exciting, in my opinion, addition to the city of Missoula, and specifically to the energy conservation, I guess to my position. And so I'd like to introduce Charlotte Pasick, who joined in mid-August, and she is the energy conservation program coordinator. And so I've asked her to come today to introduce herself, because you'll be seeing her over time, and I have let her know all about this group and its importance to us in the city, and just getting good things done. And so I just want you to get to know her and put a face with a name. And then I know everyone is excited about greenhouse gas emissions inventory updates. And so, Charlotte was brought on to do a lot of things, but the main projects right away when she started were to start both the 2020 city operations greenhouse gas emissions inventory update, as well as the community greenhouse gas emissions inventory update as well. She started both, and I've asked her to just give a brief update of where she is with that. So with that, I'll hand it over to Charlotte.
Thank you, Chase. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to meet all of you. Like Chase said, my name is Charlotte Pasick. I am from Spokane, Washington. I recently-ish moved to Missoula, and as of today, I'm going to give myself a kudos. I made it 4 months with the city so far, so woot. And so I'm really excited to be here. Chase has talked about you guys a lot, and I'm really excited that going forward, we're going to be chatting together, giving updates. And as Chase had mentioned, one of my biggest roles right now is working on the municipal and the community greenhouse emissions inventories. I'm going to just start with the community side right now because that'll be the quickest update for everybody. Due to several little projects that we have in place right now, one of them being our waste baseline study, and another one working with Northwestern Energy about future data requests and how they're going to be reporting data to us. Those are our two biggest stakeholders that are part of our community inventory. And they're also one of the ones that are going to take a little bit longer than we were expecting to get our data back from them. And so as of right now, with other stakeholders such as Montana Rail Link and Mountain Line and our other affiliates with the Transportation Department, we are going to look to have at least a month. I'm expecting a month or two delay on getting data back from them. Hopefully not too long, but that's what it's looking like right now. I'm happy to give a bigger update later once I get more information. So I'm just going to switch over to the municipal side, which I'm really excited about. The focus of that is all of the city operations, buildings and facilities, with also the kind of the same lens as the community. So looking at energy, waste, our fleet and everything like that. I've got majority of all that data in right now. Got a couple little trickling data pieces that we need to get back, such as our soon to be employee commute survey, as well as some other little behind the scenes data. What I can tell you right now is Chase gave me a lot of history about Missoula, and from our last inventory update, which was a few years ago, there has been kind of big changes that happened with the city, such as acquiring Missoula Water, which we know already should affect what we're going to see looking at the data when it reports back. I can tell you right now, I already see the difference with those additional accounts across the board. So besides that, once we get all that information in, we're going to be happy to get that portal set up, be presenting to council, and hopefully going forward, we know that we can use this as continuing data and groundwork as we make our changes for fleet or facilities, which I know Chase is going to be talking about the energy portion of that in just a moment, as well as any other like internal policies and practices that we have for our operations employees for the city, and as well as any conjunction partnership with the county itself. Other than that, I think that's a good layout for right now. And I like to turn it back to Chase because I know he's going to be talking about a good chunk of how my data work as well as our work with the county are going to play into our energy performance contract.
Yeah, but before maybe you turn your screen back off, Charlotte, but please stay on for all of this. You know, are there any questions from the team about that? Again, these are going to be kind of lightning round updates, and we are around to have a discussion or answer any questions. Just so you know, when Charlotte started, she and I did a bunch of work planning, obviously, and these two updates were what we wanted to get done sooner rather than later, and we set the goal of January 27th, I think it was. I don't know how we got that specific, but we did for both of those, and it looks like we're going to hit that for the municipal or city operations inventory update. If not, be a little ahead of that. But then for those reasons that Charlotte mentioned, on the community side, we're somewhat beholden to these big utility organizations to get data, and we've been working with them for months, and that process just takes a little time. So that one we might miss the deadline, but I promise you we're pushing as hard as we can to not miss it by much. So.
Just wanted to say welcome to the area, Charlotte. It's great having you. And Chase is really going to benefit from your expertise, I'm sure. And he's a wonderful guy to work with.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot so far. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and we look forward to working with you in the coming months. These emissions inventory, it's amazing how much more effort they take than you think they might. One of my questions for you is, do you guys use a particular software spreadsheet? What do you guys use to, I mean, sometimes you get apples and oranges and you get BTUs and you've got, kilowatts, and sometimes you have who knows what all. Is there a really good program out there that does that for you?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just start with this. So right now, Chase had introduced me to the program that they had been using in the past, which is provided by ICLEI. It's called ClearPath. And it's actually a pretty intuitive system. And it comes with its guiding protocols for the government and for the community, in which I have to dive deep into those protocols to find out how I'm supposed to handle the data that we're receiving or having to go fetch ourselves. In terms of like that oranges and apples portion of it, it's really nice. There's a lot of different conversions that I can use based off those protocols. But the nice thing is at least for the municipal side, a lot of those portions I can directly go in and get that information from the utility by logging into a portal and actually absolutely straight off get all the data that I need from that, and then go ahead and just let the system run all the calculations on the behind scenes to give me everything I need for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that system's been around for a long time. It's evolved, but even back our baseline on the municipal side, at least back in 2008, the inventory that Robin Saha and his group of students did, they used a form of that same software, and it was provided by ICLEI as well. So we're trying to keep that consistency throughout these inventories, although each one is a little bit different. And so we have a system, and Charlotte mentioned we have protocols, and we have a software that helps convert all of the unit inputs into a universal metric tons of CO2 equivalent, so that we have a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. But it does allow flexibility for decisions or things that don't apply to our exact situation. And when they don't, we'll daylight those and include those in the report.
Hey, quick question. Oh, welcome, Charlotte, by the way.
Thank you,
Several
Brian.
years ago, we were using ICLEI, and I showed up at a Missoula City Council meeting, and that came up, and there was a huge turnout against what was perceived as ICLEI were somehow tied into some conspiracy theory, Agenda 21
Agenda
type
21.
of stuff.
Yep.
Is that still an ongoing thing, or has it been?
It's not. In Missoula, that has calmed. Brian, I'll never forget those moments. And in fact, we had to, for a few city council meetings, request a police presence because we didn't know what was going to happen. And some of the folks that were showing up, were potentially a bit scary, but mercifully that has calmed down, even over the last 4 years. And so, that's a good thing. So some of those conspiracy theories are still out there. It's not Agenda 21 anymore. It's Agenda something different into the future, I think. But it's focused on United Nations. I think they're Sustainable Development Goals now. But we haven't had that presence for a while in Missoula, and I know that we appreciate that. Although healthy discourse is obviously a good thing, but that got to kind of a scary level.
Team, I also wanted to say welcome, Charlotte, and echo Brian's comments, and Michael and Chris and everybody. Great to have you on, and looking forward to working with you more in the coming months. One question, both for you, Charlotte and Chase. So with January 27th, as far as kind of the first deadline, and then later on after that, as far as getting more data from some of the larger users, what, I guess, do you anticipate that a report will come out after January 27th or before the rest of the data is available? Or kind of what should we look for, after January 27th? And then I don't know if you have a timeline for later on after that when you get data from the larger users.
Yeah, I might jump in, Charlotte, and then please add. That's a great question, Jeremy. So the way that the process will go, and January 27th is just an arbitrary date that we chose for our work plan, but on the municipal side, we only have the employee commute survey left. All the other numbers are collected and crunched into ClearPath. We hope to distribute that on Monday to city staff. and give them next week to respond. Then Charlotte will take the results we get from that. It's a voluntary survey, figure out how to extrapolate that so that it's a credible number to represent the entire city staff. And then we'll write the report. And then, what I imagine is we'll take that report and build a presentation and bring it to the energy and climate team, and then take it through the normal public process of city council, where it's committee and then full council, and then make our rounds to the community groups as well. And then we'll replicate that process for the community inventory when it's ready. We worked closely with Climate Smart Missoula in the first community inventory, so that one might be a little bit different. And our relationship in the first inventory with them was the Energy Corps member at the time and myself collected all the data and entered it into ClearPath and came up with the numbers or the quantitative part. And then we wrote the report together. And then Climate Smart Missoula really did the community outreach, as that community-based organization. And so, I imagine they'll play more of a role in that outreach part in this community one as well. So you'll likely see Amy or Caroline or one of their staff alongside Charlotte and I when it comes time to bring the community inventory to this team and otherwise.
Thank you.
Just to add, Chase, I know we've had the discussion about us meeting once a month and sometimes not always fitting with your schedule. So when you're getting to that point where you're starting to line out dates for when reports are going to come out, need for review, comment, know that, given, and I'm sure Kristen or Megan can correct me, as long as we can notice a public meeting in whatever it is, 48 hours or whatever it is, we can have a special meeting to review your proposed documents and something like that. So just let us know, and we can try to adapt to your ongoing schedule.
I appreciate that, Chris and team, but at the same time, I want to be clear. I wasn't able to make the December meeting only because I didn't know that the team was meeting until a few days before, and I just had things locked in on my schedule that I couldn't move, unfortunately. But it's really kind of it should be on me to adapt to your schedule, and actually it's not even an adaptation, because after that I think you and or Kirsten or both sent me your regular schedule, and you intend to meet regularly again. And Charlotte and I have all of those on our calendar. So, I don't see my schedule being a barrier to meeting your schedule moving forward with that setup. Now that it's more regular and we have placeholders in our calendars already. But, like we had with the 100% clean electricity resolution, if a special meeting needs to happen for some reason, then great and sure. Again, as long as Kirsten and the city clerk's office is okay and can manage that.
Good, thanks.
But no, I have no intention of you adapting to my schedule. I'm busy, but so are you. And again, now that we have it locked in, we're all good.
Sounds good. All right. Yeah, I like that we're getting. We've had a number of these discussions for the team here, and sometimes we weren't always on the same page with Chase and that department. And I think, not that it wasn't good before, but we're working hard to always know what's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months out, so we can be prepared to respond or do whatever we need to do in a reasonable amount of time, instead of having a late breaking effort if we can avoid it. So, yeah, and I think we're making good progress there.
I do too.
So Chase, back to you.
Okay. So, one thing where the timing didn't quite work out, and in my comments that I sent to Chris, at least, and I'm not sure, Chris, if you read those comments or forwarded them to the team in the last meeting, sort of in proxy of me not being able to be there in person, but
We did go over the two documents you sent us.
Okay.
So, and we've read them. So, yeah, we've got that familiarity. I've got them right here, as a matter of fact.
That's great. So, this is one where the timing didn't work out perfectly, but I also think it's okay. Chris and I talked, and more than the contract portion of the energy savings performance contract, this team is most interested, as I understand it, and can really provide some great feedback when we get to the technical part. And so I can explain that a little bit more, but just a brief update on our energy savings performance contract. The city of Missoula, 10 months ago, I guess, through a competitive RFP solicitation, chose McKinstry as an energy services company. I know Brian has familiarity. The University of Montana also selected McKinstry as their energy services company, and more recently, Missoula County did as well. So there's some efficiency there, and I think some future partnerships to be had by having that same company serve in that fashion. And so in those 10 or so months, I worked with McKinstry staff and then key city staff across departments who operate facilities and buildings and assets that consume energy, to come up with a scope of work for the first round of investment grade audits. And so I brought a contract to the Administration and Finance Committee of City Council yesterday. That was a master contract with McKinstry that essentially just sort of defined our overall relationship with them and the services that they'll provide the city. And then we structured that master contract so that we can add addendums as we work through the entire city building portfolio in phases. Traditionally, I think energy performance contracting organizations will do most or all of their buildings, facilities, and assets in one fell swoop. But for lots of reasons, the city was not able to do that. So I also brought forward the first addendum to that master contract, which is the first phase of investment grade audits. And I might share a slide from that presentation, if that's okay with the team, just to show you what's included in that first phase.
Great.
Okay. So do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And so again, I think this team is probably familiar with energy savings performance contracts, but essentially, it's a really great and effective tool, and we think a smart tool because we're able to do chunks of work, at an expedited rate, more so than just the normal general fund budget process and department by department. So, by aggregating this work and choosing an energy services company to guide us through that work, then we can do, bigger chunks than normal at an expedited pace. And then the financial sort of elegance of it is we can do it with little to no capital out of pocket. And the way and the reason for that is the process goes, we do investment grade audits, and then the findings of those investment grade audits are typically what you would imagine. It's all of the details of the building, it's all the details of the systems, and then based on those, we get a list of energy conservation measures or energy efficiency retrofits or construction projects with the group of facilities and buildings that they just took a look at. And then the key part is they guarantee energy savings associated with each of those energy conservation measures or building energy efficiency projects. And that becomes contractual. And so after that, the city team takes a look, and this is where I could see the energy and climate team playing a role. we take a look at that group of projects and all of the information from the IGA, including the guaranteed payback. We decide which projects we want to move forward with. And then normally the projects that are paid for by the guaranteed savings. That's traditionally how these things go. And that's what we're expecting, frankly. And because those guaranteed savings are contractual to McKinstry, then our financial to move forward is mitigated, because through a measurement and verification process, if those guaranteed savings aren't achieved, then McKinstry is on the hook to cut us a check for the difference. We obviously, pay some overhead for that risk mitigation. But, again, are generally fairly risk averse. And so that's just an overview, of the energy savings performance contract tool. These are all of the general goals of a performance contract. I don't think I need to go through them, but I presented these actually at the pre-submittal conference when our RFP was out to the potential bidders. And it was important for them to know what the city's goals were. And then moving forward, I think it's important for city council and the public and this team to know what those goals are too. These are pretty traditional. One that's not is, because I was the person facilitating this as city staff on behalf of a bunch of different departments, I was able to put our energy conservation and climate action goals, in the forefront. And it is on the same playing field as all of these other traditional goals of the project. And so that was pretty exciting. And I think that will pay benefits certainly toward the eventual achievement of our carbon neutrality by 2025 goal.
Chase,
Yes.
I think these are great projects. And what I would hope, and I'm not sure how best to do this, is to, as the company proceeds, get the information out to the community. I mean, this is something obviously that everybody can learn from, and that's one of the major charges to our committee, which is the educational part. So this
Sure.
is huge, and I don't know how best to go about this. That's probably your responsibility, and any help the committee can give you, we'll try.
Sure, that's great. And I'd love to hear ideas, Scott, from you or the team, not necessarily today, but as we move forward with how to do that. Our traditional methods are posting on websites and the public process that we go through, with city council and otherwise. But, we want to get the word out, and obviously this is public information and something we're really excited about. So wide open to any suggestions from this team. But
Yeah, I
appreciate
don't know how we
that
do this,
suggestion.
but I'd love to see front page newspaper stories about these projects.
Yeah. I guess even though it was talking about the contract, yesterday, at least Martin Kidston and the Missoula Current often attend those meetings and cover it. And, I guess there was a little bit of me that was hoping that there would be a story at least, even at this stage, but there wasn't. But yeah, we'll work on that, Scott, and I definitely appreciate that comment. So this is just a slide showing the first phase of investment grade audits. And so, we have the building maintenance department and the city shops over on Scott Street there. We have all 5 fire stations that we're going to take a look at right away. The Missoula Art Museum is included in the first phase. We have the 3 parking structures that are managed by the Missoula Parking Commission. And then a few different projects at Parks and Recreation. We have the 2 aquatics facilities, as well as irrigation in, I should have this committed by memory, but I think 39 parks. We're going to look at their irrigation system. So back to the water conservation piece that Chris, you brought up earlier. And then we're going to take a look at the outdoor field lighting at the McCormick complex as well. And so again, you can see there are building audits, there are lighting audits. And again, that's the traditional sort of energy efficiency and conservation side. but we were also able to include renewable energy and solar considerations as well. And that's for obvious reasons. We can't achieve carbon neutrality without it. And also we have our 100% clean electricity initiative that was recently adopted in this past year by both the city and county as well. So this is the first grouping of investment grade audits as a high level overview. This was just an example that we went over. And then this is the schedule and next steps. And this isn't a brilliant slide or even contains a bunch of content, but just a quick review. We presented the Missoula Parking Commission Board on Tuesday, A&F yesterday, this team today, and then we hope that council will give their final approval on Monday. They did vote unanimously to adopt it in committee yesterday. And so it does go to the consent agenda on Monday night, which is exciting, but it also could be teased out. That doesn't happen frequently, but it could. So, we think we're on the right path to getting this done. And then, because we've spent many months developing that first phase, the relationship with McKinstry is already in place with all the departments, and we're ready to start scheduling these IGAs right after the new year. And there are some benefits to that. One being McKinstry tells us that puts us in a good position sequentially or in terms of our timeline to be ready to have the construction contracts and pieces ready to go by that season. So, this is a time, I don't know if construction slows down anymore in Missoula, but if it does, then it's, January, February when we'll be doing these audits. And then hopefully we'll be ready to go, for the start of that construction season. And because of that, we think that we'll get good pricing and that we'll get in the pipeline to start getting this work done, which is the exciting part. So I think with that, again, being succinct is not always my strong point. That was way more than a lightning round talk or overview of this, but I think I'll stop there and happy to entertain any discussion or questions.
Chase, this is Jeremy. I have just one question. Is there a decision-making process that will be followed as far as which projects come to the top of the list, so to speak? Whether that's based upon total carbon usage, amount of how long it takes to pay it back,
Yep.
a whole bunch of different factors, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. So paybacks at the top of the list, obviously, and in the context of those guaranteed savings. Again, because we were able to put the goal of our climate action plan for municipal operations there, we've asked McKinstry to include greenhouse gas emissions reductions calculations in our IGA process. So I'll certainly push for that to be right on the same playing field as payback and those traditional financial mechanisms, but it's certainly in the ballpark. And then, I think also just because of how dynamic sort of city buildings and the changes there are, I imagine just sort of like space needs and other things will be considered prioritized projects as well. But mostly it's payback in the financials and greenhouse gas emissions reduction potential. And with that, I would include, the city obviously is committed to more rooftop solar on city-owned buildings, and so I'm hoping that plays along with greenhouse gas emissions reduction.
Right. All good information. Chase, is that final decision made at the city council level? Is that made at the mayor's office level? Where does that decision come in?
So the first cut will come from the internal city team, and that's department heads and or the staff that manage these buildings and facilities, and also budgets. And then again, we will need to bring that forward to groups like the energy and climate team for feedback and input. But formally, we have a different, a separate contracting process to engage in the construction work. And so that will be a public process that will need to be approved by city council at that point.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, earlier on you said, where we'd be used to you in the process was as these audits come back in and you're working with obviously the departments to evaluate which projects move forward and which ones don't. Is it the next step that you'd like us to be involved in, or how? I didn't quite catch the various steps where you thought we would be best used to the process.
Yeah, maybe to sound like a bureaucrat, it could be both really. And I don't have a hard line or a decision there, but I could see when we have, these findings, inviting McKinstry to the energy and climate team and talking about their findings, at that level and getting input that, we could bring to those internal meetings of the department heads, financial decision makers, and building operators and managers, if you will. So I think that process can work if it works for you. And McKinstry is more than willing. They're super engaged. And in fact, I had them on the hook to come today to talk to you. And then, back them off a little bit, Chris, after our discussion. But yeah, I want you to hear from them. They're obviously the professionals and way smarter than I could ever imagine being in terms of this work. So that's how I could envision this interacting with this team.
Excellent. And I know we had talked about having them come in to talk about the University of Montana's combined heat and power plant. But I think January will be a good time for that, because then the master service agreement will be in place, and they'll have their list of projects that they're going to review and be ready to get out the gates. And so let's plan on having them come in then, and we can also have them talk about the University of Montana combined heat power at the same time. So let's just tentatively put that on the schedule.
That's great, and I'm sure they'll be happy to come. I just want to be clear: we won't have IGA findings by that January.
No, just the master service contract.
Okay.
That'll allow them to begin their audits.
Great.
No, but then the fact that they're under contract at that point, I think is the point I was trying to make. That's a good time to bring them in once you move through your administrative process to get them under contract to begin the audits.
Okay, no, that's great, and maybe Brian and I can coordinate getting McKinstry there. Brian, are you the point person with them at the university, or?
Yeah, actually, I've already talked to them. We talked about having them give a presentation in January, and I already checked with Tim, and he and Reed are planning on attending the January 14th? I can't remember. I think so. At our next meeting. So, and I guess I missed something, Chris. You wanted them there to talk about the CHP. I invited them to talk about the energy conservation that they're performing, now that they're the same entity for the university, for the city, and the county. So that's what I asked them to talk about. I can back that up and ask them to talk a little bit about the CHP, or I can talk about the CHP for that matter. But I thought that there was a great opportunity for them to discuss their eco district concept with the team. Since again, there's that intersection between the county, the city, and the university. I think that opens up some pretty interesting possibilities. But they're on board. They can make it. They're planning on making it. I just maybe need to tweak what I asked them to. And Chase, if you want them to speak specifically to some of your things, that's certainly your prerogative.
Sure thing. And that just reminded me, if I could have just a couple more seconds on this item. One thing that is different than the update I sent in December, I want to point out, in the December update, because it was still included, included in the round of investment grade audits were city-owned streetlights. And at the 11th hour, those were actually pulled from this phase. And that was resulting from a conversation with Jeremy Keene, the Public Works Director. And, they thought that they want to do it, but they thought they had the capacity and budget to do it in-house, and in-house in a similar or the same time frame. So that, in respect to that, we pulled it from the performance contract, at least in this phase. We can always add it back in later if that doesn't pan out. The other piece that I did send you a draft of the energy master plan outline that I put together. And that just wasn't quite ready yet either. And we wanted to get these IGAs going sooner rather than later. And so we didn't include that in this addendum, but Brian von Lossberg, the council chair, agreed to talk with Dale Bickle and I right after the new year about that, and put the little bit of remaining work we have left there, and include it in a future addendum, hopefully in the year. So I did want to point that out. And again, happy to hear any comments or feedback on that energy master planning outline that I forwarded you, Chris, and it sounds like you forwarded the team. I was hoping you would. So
Yeah, and everyone has it, but I don't think we discussed commenting on it. So if folks remember, this is the Energy Master Plan, draft scope of work, and it goes through data, benchmarking, goal setting, energy utilizations, and so forth. So folks, take a look at that. And if you have any comments, please forward them on to Chase. I will do the same. So we'll just make sure we have that as something on our list. One other thing on what you were talking about with Jeremy Keene and Public Works, they generally, my understanding from previous conversations is they're not participating in this particular element as much, this particular city project, because they had thought that they could do some of these without the funding, as well as they also were looking at a separate mechanism, a separate energy performance contract company to do some of this work. And so I think that's great. It's all fine. They can often run their own show because they have their own revenue stream, and that really allows them to be a lot more flexible sometimes than other city departments. And so at some point we'll talk to Jeremy about how that's going, and maybe he can fill in the team as to how Public Works is approaching this as well, because I know it's also on their radar.
Sure, yeah. And again, we did structure that master contract so that we could have the flexibility to add addendums whenever it's appropriate. So, just one example of that is you'll likely notice, or I would have right away, that City Hall isn't on that first phase of IGA list. We know that's a big energy hog in our building portfolio at the city, but we don't know at this point the future of that building. You folks, and I think it's an agenda item, know the federal building and the due diligence and exploration on that building. And so because that's a somewhat unknown or uncertain, the future of the use of City Hall, then we decided to not include that in this phase. But certainly it's at the top of the list for future phases because of what we know about that building, when it's appropriate or when it makes strategic sense. So just a little bit of the thought process, but behind how we structured that master contract.
Chase, what ESCO did Public Service or Public Works choose?
I don't know. That actually is news to me. I hadn't heard that. The reason we took it off is because Jeremy wanted to do it in-house. So I'm not sure, Chris, if you have any information there.
It was a lot smaller. He was actually working with a contractor to do some evaluations, and if they found things that were economical, then they would shop it out, I think. Okay. So I don't think they went through that process as of yet. I think they were trying to identify in-house what projects they might wish to move forward on.
I see.
And so it's definitely a little more informal, but they're working with a consultant who was helping them to identify potential projects, but not to that point where they're ready to contract the full audit or the subsequent upgrades.
Great. So I've probably gone over. But should I just cover quickly the last sort of, I don't know if I should even call it a lightning round overview at this point, but the last item that would be of interest, I think, to the team.
Yeah, I think we have some time, about in the next 10 minutes or so. The 100% Clean Electricity Initiative,
Yeah.
and working with the county and Northwestern Energy.
Yeah. So this one actually might be more brief, but you know, there's been plenty of action since the city, county, and Northwestern Energy signed the memorandum of understanding to work together. And so a couple pieces to give an overview. In that MOU, we agreed to create an implementation plan. And Diana Mineta, my counterpart at the county, have been working with John Bushnell and a bunch of Northwestern Energy staff and executives, I guess, and some subject matter experts across the state to develop that implementation plan. And we have. It's in a draft form. And, you know, it is several kind of specific projects with specific timelines that the city, county, and Northwestern Energy can work on together toward that goal. I can't give any details on that today, and it's not because I'm trying to like dangle some mysterious thing, but you know, Diana and I and John Bushnell, who is our counterpart at Northwestern Energy, we developed a draft, and that draft now is getting a final review by the Northwestern Energy regulatory and legal team. And then we hope, and there's a good chance that it will be reviewed by their executive team on Monday, actually. They have, I think, monthly meetings. And unfortunately, we missed our originally scheduled one because of that legal and regulatory review. But we think that we're going to hit that Monday meeting for them to review. Still to be determined. But it sits with Northwestern Energy as the synopsis. And as soon as the executive team, their executive team reviews it, then we'll be ready to bring that back to the Missoula community and through that public process, which includes this team and which includes the ad hoc group of climate advocates that helped develop the resolution and have been part of this all along as well, among other, again, outreach and engagement techniques. But this team will see it, you know, as soon as we get it back and make any changes that Northwestern Energy executive team deems necessary, and that folks on our side deem acceptable changes, if that makes sense. So to be determined, but hopefully really soon. Again, probably right after the new year. And then the way that goes is, you know, we'll bring that through a public round of engagement and feedback opportunity and make any changes there that are agreed upon by all the parties in the community. And then we'll bring it through the city council process for hopeful adoption. So that's one piece of the 100% Clean Electricity Initiative. The other, and Chris and I talked about this, and it can be a little confusing, so I want to make it clear. That implementation plan is specific to the MOU, which the parties to the MOU are the city, county, and Northwestern Energy. So that's kind of one track under this 100% Clean Electricity Initiative. The second is a bigger tent that includes the work between the city, county, and Northwestern Energy, but also can include other things. And I guess a connection there is I know several of you participated in the workshop that Climate Smart Missoula, the city and county hosted to talk about those options and what should be included in the community roadmap attached to the 100% Clean Electricity Initiative. And so if you participated in that workshop, thank you. And I hope it was interesting. I definitely found it interesting, and we heard a lot of great things. And then, Climate Smart Missoula is still kind of crunching all of those numbers and writing that community roadmap, again, under the big tent of this whole 100% Clean Electricity Initiative. And, they're chugging along on it. It's not there yet, but we and they will bring that to, again, this team and the public when it's ready to go. So that's another prong. And then the third is, this is kind of repeated throughout all of these steps, but we continue to work with Northwestern Energy and partners across the state on developing a green tariff. A green tariff is an increasingly common tool where customers of regulated utilities, that's our utility environment here. They're regulated monopolies, but customers in those scenarios will have the option to buy power from newly developed renewable energy sources through a special rate or tariff. That's the jargony word. They're called green tariffs, and they see that on their utility bills. And that process is, again, part of all this, but a little bit separate because it comes from, in 2019, the Public Service Commission approved a settlement agreement between Northwestern Energy, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, the Montana Consumer Council, and Walmart as part of the last rate case to initiate a stakeholder process to develop this green tariff. It was something those groups wanted, and it turns out we wanted as well. And so Northwestern honored that Public Service Commission directive, if you will, and that's where the city of Missoula County, and city of Bozeman and city of Helena were invited to that stakeholder process. So we've been participating in that, and because it relates so much to our implementation plan, our community roadmap, and the achievement, frankly, of this whole initiative, we acquired some funding, and funding was allocated by City Council in the last budget to hire a consultant to help develop the technical details of this green tariff. And because we're working so closely with those other local government entities, again, City of Missoula, Missoula County, City of Helena, and City of Bozeman, they all had budget items approved in their FY21 budgets as well. So we did a combined RFP to engage this consultant in the development of those details. And so that was issued by Missoula County. And again, all of the partners are recognized, and we've drafted an interlocal agreement to formalize that partnership and then work out all of the details of how that's going to work. Just a government, again, an administrative item. But that our RFP is out. And Chris, I'll send you a link to that, just so the team can take a look at that. It closes December 18th. And then again, I imagine this team interacting with that, when that consultant is chosen, just getting updates, and being able to review the report and the recommendations that they write, that those local government entities will then bring back to the table of Northwestern Energy and the development of this green tariff to move through the Public Service Commission process. So it goes back and comes full circle for hopeful adoption. That's a bunch of words, but yeah, let's open it up for discussion. I'm tired of talking. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me. So Scott.
Chase, real quick. I know that in California, this has worked well with large organizations. For example, Lundberg Family Farms,
yep.
Because they market as an organic company, it was pro-business for them. Do we have, or do you have any examples where individual customers have come on board, and what it was other than general conscience that caused them to sign up for higher electricity bills?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and typically you're spot on. These green tariffs were developed for these huge entities. I didn't know Lundberg Farms, but the Apples and the Googles of the world, and they obviously have a lot of clout. We're pushing for, and you'll see in the RFP, one of the things we're taking a look at is eligibility for participation, in lieu of some other tools available to the residential sector, or each of us in our individual homes. We're hoping to push for not only large customers to be able to subscribe to this, but also individuals or the residential customer class. So we have seen a couple of other examples, and maybe I'll forward links again, Chris, and you can forward it to the group. But Xcel Energy is behind the two that are coming to the top of my head in two different places. Xcel Energy in some of their markets in Colorado, as well as their market in Minnesota. And so in general, these are at a premium, but I think you'll see the premium for these Xcel Energy green tariff products for residential customers are pretty minimal. And so, again, I don't know if that's a compelling financial reason to do it without a clean conscience. And so I don't think I've answered your question exactly, but it is an opt-in, and it's progress toward our goal for folks to have that option. And then, I guess we'll have to do our best to market it to our community to participate toward these goals and try and hit on all kinds of reasons. Yeah.
You answered my question, and very fully. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I did participate in that when I was living in Colorado, and Xcel started that back, before 2000, and they, it was kind of green tariff. So there was a wind farm that they own and operated. And so we paid about $6, $7 a month for that premium of 100%, clean electricity, the equivalent, obviously, electrons are electronics, so you can't do that, but they've had that for quite a while, and it's been fully subscribed for a long time, and it hasn't been a problem. And I certainly have seen a lot of businesses use it or similar ones, and then it becomes a lot of breweries like to do it. Breweries are very, energy intensive operations, water intensive operations. And we saw a lot of the breweries take on these sort of energy tariffs and then they market it, of course.
Yeah.
As they should.
Great questions. It's exciting though, and we're obviously excited to move down the path to have those options available to the Montana customers and Missoula customers.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm gonna move on since we've got just under a half hour. That was excellent, Chase. And
well, you'll probably never invite me back now. I appreciate it, and thanks for everything you all are doing, and have a great holiday season.
Thanks, Chase. You too, and Charlotte. Welcome again. I know you've been here for 4 months, but we look forward to at some point in the future actually meeting you in person.
Sounds great to me.
Thanks. You guys are welcome to stay on if you want, or I'm sure you got lots to do. So whichever. We're just going to move on then. The next item up, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but it's worth a hit on our time here. Is that they got this 2050 long range transportation plan that is ongoing through this MOP process. So sort of a regional transportation hub that the city participates in. Where they both try to prioritize transportation projects, but also try to provide a broader context for, how we move forward on transportation issues within the city and within the broader development area there. They've got a web page here. I thought I'd try to pull up if I have the technology here. And let's see here. So, so it's called Missoula Connect. So it's a long-range planning process. They're currently looking for input. They've got, they've actually had 2 or 3 of their initial community outreach meetings. They've got a couple more. And one thought in general, as we move through this briefly, is, you know, what role does the energy and climate team wish to have? Do we wish to comment on this? Do we wish to participate in any way? So they've got their little process here, and they've got their planning process, and they start out with everything you can have. Then they screen the projects down and score them, and then develop their scenario for moving forward. So those are their 5 steps, and you come up with this perfect little system here. You know, the world doesn't work quite that way, but they are using a consultant. This looks like something a consultant would come up with, you know. One of the things that I found is, you know, is these transportation scenarios, and this is kind of their real crux of this. I would note that these scenarios over the coming decades could result in as much as 178 million in regional transportation projects over the next 30 years. So it's a big chunk of change, and it's an important chunk of change, because if we do business as usual, you know, like where I live up here in Miller Creek, you know, it's just more roads and many more roads. But if we can do this in such a way that we can reduce transportation impacts, we can reduce greenhouse gas. And so therefore, it's worth doing. So they've got their 3 big buckets. Their new connections, you know, brand new roads like out Mullen or up here in Miller Creek. They've got enhancements of things where they're working on interchanges and intersections to make them more efficient, to make them bicycle friendly and the such. And then they've got what they call regional equity, which is to say that one part of the town or this regional planning area does not suffer more than another, that we all benefit. And I know a lot of the projects they're looking at are in places where there's been underinvestment in infrastructure, like on the west side and the north side. Although a lot of the work right now is going to be out in the Mullen Road area, because that's just where the work is going to be for the next 20 or 30 years. So one of the things when they took these 3 scenarios and they looked at their main elements, their outcomes they want, it's interesting to note that greenhouse gas is down here. And under new connections, they give that an A, which is decreased vehicle use and congestion. So they definitely are considering greenhouse gas emissions. I need to spend a little more time trying to understand this, but under the enhanced and the regional, it shows up as their blue dot, which is more supportive, but not quite in the orange. And so one of the questions is, how do we move these 2 dots more toward the orange, if that's possible, given all these other very important considerations like accessibility and safety. And so I don't know at this point, you know, how involved we want to be, but there is a schedule for what comes next. So they're in this portion now: community values and existing conditions, move on to goals, evaluation, the framework, project identification, then move through the process of getting to specific projects in a plan. So that clear out in April. So there's still plenty of opportunity for us to engage with MOP and what they're up to through this Missoula Connect process. I don't know if folks had a chance to look at this a little bit more, but there's a nice video there at the beginning that's got some good background. I think that's what this is again. If we had a little more time, we could talk about it, but I do want to sort of open the floor to, you know, what people's thoughts are in terms of engaging on this process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody. And I know it seems like we've lost, I know Michael and Josh also had to move off. So there's myself, you, Jeremy, Scott, and Brian are still here. So, but anyways, enough to get a discussion going anyways. So let me open it up.
This is Jeremy. I haven't dived into the actual MPO process, but I'm interested in taking a look at it, and I guess I can't comment a whole lot without diving in and understanding it more completely.
And I really have not spent a lot of time either. I'm trying to get to that point myself. I just, yeah, want to get the process rolling in case we decide to move forward with it. Certainly can affect your neck of the woods out there, Scott. You know, that's a lot of development opportunity in Grant Creek and in the greater that whole airport region, that's for sure. And I know you've been involved in some of the development issues out there.
Well, yeah. The thing is, Chris, this is important, but it's already quite well developed and with a consultant. And the trouble with once you've hired a consultant and they've laid out the process by which this is going to evolve over many years, it may be hard for the committee to gain any traction. It might be better for people just to comment as individuals.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I don't know either. You know, they're on for public comment, but yeah, it seems like a lot of these things are I don't want to say quite set in stone, but you know, they at the end of the day, they know what roads are going to go where, and they know how they're going to approach some of the transportation issues. You know, congestion, bike lanes, walking. You know. Those are pretty important, trying to connect one side of town to the other with public transit and whatnot. But yeah, is there an opportunity? And that's a good question. Since we still have one more thing we want to cover today, and I'll send out a note, let's go ahead and try to review what material there is available on that website. And then we'll put it on the agenda for next month. And then talk a little bit more about whether we think there's, you know, and it could be a low level of effort from our standpoint, as much as, you know, just trying to get them to recommit and encourage their efforts toward greenhouse gas reductions as you know, as it is an element, but, you know, the notion that it need to be considered as a higher priority element, given the issues that we're realizing these days. So instead of engaging in the whole thing, just you know, hey, you guys, let's make sure you do this in a letter or in a presentation to their group.
Yeah, Chris, I think that's a good point. I haven't reviewed it either. I would imagine they're looking at electrification of vehicles. I know the university has 2 electric buses, planning on 3 more. Eventually we'll have an entire fleet of electric buses. I know the university is also working with the city about maybe co-locating electric bus charging stations and maintenance facilities. And I think part of that could spill out into public domain too, you know, having charging stations available not only for buses, but also for private vehicles, whatever. I think that would be an important place to go with some of that discussion.
Absolutely, yeah, electrification is a big one. And, you know, reducing total miles and that sort of thing. But I do think making sure the infrastructure is there and available for electrification. And that can also go as far as smart cars, reducing congestion as well at some point, and using smart electric cars to reduce idling and whatnot. And certainly the air quality impacts from you know, diesel vehicles and whatnot, but that's not really our issue. But yeah, that's a good point. All right, so we won't spend a lot of time on this, but these are all good points. Let's put it on the next agenda, get a chance to review it, and see if we come back with any additional thoughts about what we want to do or if we want to do anything. So I'm going to just mention briefly the recruitment of new team members and youth team members. So as somebody saw in that note that came from Amber, they interviewed folks yesterday, and then there's another interview later in the week or next week. It looks like that's moving forward. Looks like, Brian, your process for re-upping is moving forward. That seemed to have worked out okay.
Yeah, I can't believe I missed. So I guess as a warning to other members, when your time is up, you have a limited period of time to re-up. I guess fill out the application form. I attempted to do that immediately, but it wasn't available yet. They weren't going to post it until after the weekend, and then I forgot about it. And when I went back to it, it was already closed. But apparently, there was only one person that applied for my seat, and when they tried to schedule him, he never responded, or I don't know if it was a he or she, they never responded. And so they allowed me to re-interview for that. And I guess the appointments won't be made until 2 weeks from now, or I don't know. Is it going to be made even in December? I think their last meeting is next week.
Yeah, it may have something to do with when the city council moves to approve those. So it may not be until January.
Yeah.
How do we know when our time is up? Does anybody inform us?
Megan is doing that. Yeah, thank you, Megan. And there is a spreadsheet I have, at least I've had, I can update it with Megan, and I can pass it around with the various dates for folks. Yeah.
Scott, I believe you and I are on until 2022. I believe it's a 3-year term through like summer of 2022. And Brian, I'm glad to hear that you are interested in staying, and very much appreciate your expertise. Thanks,
Jeremy.
All righty. So the youth team member, Megan, has been working hard to get the application up. So our application process is different than for a regular team member. And so there's been a little more involved elements to it. And so it actually kind of involves well, first of all, we had a lot of back and forth as to what would be the appropriate way to put an application out there for the youth, and we went back and forth on the application itself, then on the process, or integrated that. And then once we decided that we would use the city's board vacancy process, then how might that move forward? And again, I appreciate Megan and Kristen, and I know Marty's also helped us quite a bit. It turned out to be quite a team process to do this. And so we're hoping to have that up sooner than later. Michael and I can't remember who Michael was going to work with. Maybe it was you, Josh, on doing some of the outreach. We've got a flyer. Everyone should have a copy of the flyer. So once that gets posted, I'll let everyone know what the dates are, and send it to folks. I know we'll do a more formal process with the high schools and some of the high school clubs and some of those outreaches, and move that forward, because I think it'll only be open just like the regular members for a certain amount of time. So depending on when it comes on, it may only be open until the end of the calendar year. I know we already have one person who's interested in applying, and so we have some interest, but I think once we do some outreach, we'll be able to get our 3 team members. I know Amber also said she thought she knew of somebody who wanted to apply. So that's that. So it's moving forward.
Chris, this is Megan. Can I say something real quick?
You bet.
Everyone, right after the meeting, I will get the youth application live on the website, and I will send an email to each of you with the link so you can check it out. And if there's any last minute edits you want me to make, just let me know. But in that email, I'll also forward the updated flyer, because in that process Chris was talking about, we made just a few changes. So I want to make sure everybody has the most current flyer, and that the flyer is consistent that is going out there. So I'll attach that to the email that you'll get from me this afternoon as well.
Fantastic. I know that Marty had to rebuild the staff there with Kristen and Megan, and it was right in the middle of the COVID stuff, and it was a big lift for everybody. but it seems like you guys are really on top of it, and we're so excited to have both of you supporting us at this point in time. So, all right, the last item up is this proposal for a Missoula Federal Building Energy Demonstration Project. And so the idea, of course, as we talked about last time, is that if the city moves forward in taking over the federal building with the county, and they're planning on doing an energy audit, and I'm sure they'll consider, you know, windows and doors and some lighting and this and that. But what this does is encourages them to think about this in a broader standpoint, and a standpoint of achieving their carbon neutrality goals, as well as creating a demonstration project where the city can highlight what they're doing and to reduce energy usage and generate new renewable energy, and hopefully bring more community members, businesses on board with this type of effort. One of the points we made at the last meeting, which was important, is, well, we've seen some new buildings like the library and some of the new banks that have had some pretty good efforts at energy conservation, renewable energy. This will be one of the few big efforts that's occurred in town on an existing building stock. And while we keep building things in this town, you know, it's good to be successful, I suppose, but we're not going to be able to build our way out of carbon reduction. We're going to have to work on our existing stock as a primary element. So that would be another one of the priorities is looking at this as a retrofit. So anyways, so we've got this written up. I will have to say that I have not heard back from Amber on this, although the way I've got it set up right now, it's addressed to her and her committee. But I don't know at this point if that should stop us from moving forward. We can send it to her. She can do what she wants with it. I was hoping she would be available to talk to, but that's all right. So with my little introduction over, I'll just sort of open it up for comments. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes.
Chris, I thought the proposal looked really good. I like the idea, and I think it's a great way that the city can advertise some of the building improvement, energy efficiency items that can be done, not only in this building, but all kinds of buildings all over, residential, business, etc. And I think it's key to, you know, if this were to become a demonstration project, I think it's key to relate energy efficiency measures in this building down to how an individual could do something similar, so that it's relatable. I did find some grammatical items in the letter that we could fix and clean up before sending it off. But overall, I thought it was excellent, and I think we should move forward.
Is that a motion, Mr. Flesch?
Why don't I see if there's any other comments or what have you, but I'll be happy to make a motion. But let's leave some time for other comments.
Sounds good.
If I could tag on to Jeremy, I'm going to assume that Jeremy made a motion, so I'm going to second it, but I have a couple of things. Jeremy, I'm not sure how you push a demonstration project such as this down to the individual level. We all see numerous apartment houses and condos going up all over town. Many of the structures are owned by developers. People pay rent, people pay their utility bills. There is absolutely at the present no incentives whatsoever for people to develop energy efficient apartments. And I don't know whether you put this into the building code or where you go with this, but right now, every day, walking around town, you can see things going up that are going to take the city further and further away from their goal.
Agreed.
On that bleak note.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, Scott. I think, in the minds of a apartment developer, I would have to say that, hopefully there's some incentive for them to want to spend less money on energy usage down the road. Granted that, that payoff period can be long.
It's the renters that are paying for the energy, so they have no incentive to give their tenants lower bills. None. I mean, so somewhere down the road, and Robin and I talked about this, you're going to have to first do it in terms of the city's own buildings, in terms of a policy that requires energy efficiency. And this letter is a good place to start, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Maybe
Scott,
something we want to add to your agenda.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, Scott. I mean, I think part of that is driven by the fact that the vacancy rate is what, 1%, or close to, very, very small.
Close to zero.
Right. If there was a situation where there was vacancy and the amount of an apartment's energy usage, so if you're looking at two different places and the rent is the same, but in one you pay $150 in energy and in another you pay half of that, that can be a reason for somebody to choose one location over the other. However, as you've mentioned, in the current climate, you're lucky to even find an apartment, much less concern yourself with the average utility costs for that apartment.
Yes.
One thought I've had is we've got 3 or 4 of these more subsidized affordable housing options the city, the county, various entities are moving forward with, where there may be opportunities like this carbon footprint that Climate Smart Missoula has, or other government funding that they can use in these buildings to make them more energy efficient, particularly with the goal of making these more affordable. As we know, when you rent an apartment, you often also end up paying the utilities for that apartment. So one thing I think we can do is reach out across some of these entities that are proposing and just getting started with 3 or 4 large-scale affordable housing complexes, where I think we can have a little more of a say coming through the city than maybe just a private developer putting in an apartment. But at least it gives us, I think, a place to start. Josh, did you have something?
Yeah, no, I've been in and out a little bit the last 20 minutes with Northside internet connection problems, but I like this discussion. The point Scott brings up, that historical tension sometimes between green energy development and cost. It's different when you look at it from a renter perspective. And boy, if you could lower renters' energy bills, that could really help people that are really having a hard time right now in Missoula anyway, because there's no place to rent anything, because like you said, 0% to find anything. But it's kind of an interesting angle to approach this, and from a social justice perspective too. I don't have anything substantive to add other than just it's an interesting point.
Yeah, an important one. I remember I was renting an apartment and they had electric baseboard instead of normal gas. And I think, in the middle of winter, we were paying like $300 a month to heat this place. And it was just the craziest thing, but it was the cheapest thing to build at the time. And it still is. And so if the builder is going to be the owner and operator, it's one thing, but often they build it and they sell it to somebody else to own and operate. And so there's a loop to be connected there. and an opportunity to sell. If we know who the owner and operator are going to be, and they can use that as a selling point. But I don't, like construction, the folks that build things are often not the people that end up owning and operating.
Exactly, right.
Chris, let's keep it on the agenda, but like many of you, I've got to go.
All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Jeremy, did you make a motion to move
Yes.
this plan to the chair of the the Parks and Conservation Committee?
I move that we move this forward and with some grammatical revisions and as stated to Parks and Conservation.
And Scott, you're second.
Seconded it, and-
All righty.
Yep, and I vote yes.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, let's call the roll. Megan, can you do that for us? We got 5 people, just enough to make it a quorum.
Oh, sure. One moment. Chris,
Yes. Aye.
Jeremy,
Oh, yes.
Brian,
Yes,
Scott,
he's off, but he said yes before he left.
oh, right. And Josh.
Yes.
Okay, 5 yays, no nays. The motion is carried. I'll work with Jeremy to get this cleaned up and then work with Amber to get it over to her department. All right, so next meeting is the 14th of next month. We've got a few things to work on as we go. Seemed like we had a great meeting today. I appreciate everybody's time and effort, and have a great holiday, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Everybody.